Welcome back to another episode of the Security Simplified podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Cloutier, with my co-host here, Evan Francine. Tonight, we're going to be introducing you to information security governance. We're going to bring it to you in a simplified format. This will be a series. We will do several episodes, as this is a very important topic, and a lot of times, a topic that is uncomfortable or misunderstood. So we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to unpack that. And we're going to kind of lay out for you a simplified foundation of what is information security governance. And more importantly, what are the practical steps to working through it to implement it in your organization to have better information security. So with that, I turn it over to our fearless founder and guru, Evan Francine.
Guru. I feel like I should be sitting on the top of a mountain somewhere. But, information security governance, a lot of people cringe, when we talk about information security governance, just the mention of the word, they cringe. And for me, I love information security governance. When done well, it creates harmony, in your information security program. But we have some things to cover tonight. I think first, you already introduced the series. This is for the next 6-7 podcasts. We're going to talk about information security governance. People should come away with some really good tips they can go and apply right now. They should be able to look at their own security program and see what maybe they're not doing correctly with governance. But we'll talk about in this episode, we'll talk about what is information security governance. We'll talk about why do people cringe when we talk about information security governance. We'll cover, information security governance is not one size fits all. So if you're expecting to Google a whole bunch of templates and follow what somebody else did, sorry to break it to you, it's going to take a little more work than that. It's not one size fits all. And then at the end, we'll wrap up tonight talking about a CISO. What is a CISO's job, as simple as we can make it, by title or function? So I'm excited about this series. This is my jam. I love accountability. I don't think you can move an information security program forward or really make any impact or change in anything unless people have roles and responsibilities and there's accountability. So I'm jacked about this. So I'll post the first question to you. So I'll give you a chance to say some things too, because otherwise I just get too damn excited about it. So what is information security governance? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's what is it to you, right?
So to me, information security governance is the rules by which we play the game of information security. Knowing that information security is nothing more than a glorified term for risk management, governance gives me my guardrails and my guidance for how I address risk, how I evaluate it, how I measure it. The decisions that I make are directly tied back to my rules for making those decisions, which for me comes in the form of governance.
I love that, man. And the things, there are two things in there that I've used before and I love them. Information security, the governance is the rules for the game, right? So, and I've used this analogy before, go to Target, go buy a new board game, right? And what's the first thing you do before you can play the game? You have to read the rules. You don't know how to play the game. And usually, in most families, unless you're a little bit off kilter maybe, one person reads the rules. And it's that person's job then to disseminate the rules to the rest of the players. And that's one of the things that fits under the CISO's role, in my opinion. We don't expect everybody to read the policies, the charter, to read the rules for the game, but the CISO needs to disseminate those things in the reference documents. So I love your definition, man. That was awesome.
Go ahead.
Man.
Well, I was going to say, in that vein, for me, what is information security governance is, the rules, and part of, to tie back into, there is no one size that fits all. Just like a board game, pulling on that analogy, everybody plays board games to the rules, but a lot of us modify and come up with an addition of house rules, right? Where there's a modified way to play the game that works better in our family than maybe what the manufacturer put inside the box. And the same is true in information security governance. You've got to find what fits your culture, your business, your risk. The reason you can't just template this is that it really is the rules of your situation, your organization. It's not a generic set of rules that can be just broadly applied to everyone everywhere. There are some common components, but at the end of the day, the goal of governance isn't to create rules for the sake of rules, but to create guidance that allows you to move forward. So you've got to right size it for your abilities, capabilities, technologies, talents. It needs to be right sized. You can't, if you're a small business, just take some enterprise level governance model and apply it in your small business. It won't work. You're not structured that way.
100%, man. The rules for games, it's a different game. Every company's got a different game. There are concepts around information security. There's things that make it, there's a definition of the game, but there are so many different ways to play it. And so the rules in my organization are not the same rules in your organization, nor are they supposed to be. We could never expect it to be, because we don't have the same technologies. We don't have the same physical locations. We don't have the same people. We don't have the same corporate mission. There are so many things that are different in your game versus my game. And that's another reason why it's not a one size fits all. So what are the things that what do you think make people cringe? Every time you say information security governance, usually when I say it, people are like, I'm tuning out now. I don't want to talk about this.
I think part of it goes back to IT and InfoSec getting a bad rap as the Department of No. So having that kind of reputation as being a roadblock or an inhibitor to innovation or business movement, I think there's a part of that where people are inherently resistant. They hear governance, they hear extra steps, rules, process, barriers, things that are going to slow me down, waste my time, and not let me make the business move forward. So I think that's part of why people cringe. I think the other reason is a foundational misunderstanding that the rules are about how to navigate the game safely and efficiently, and not about forcing you to play it a particular way. And I think there's a misunderstanding there. I think they hear, governance and rules, and they think, okay, now IT's going to force me and InfoSec's going to force me to do it their way, where that's not what it is. It's giving you the liberty to operate, but within some boundaries. And so I think the twofold, it's a bad rap of old IT practice of, being a jerk, showing up, doing the quick, fast work, and not engaging the user. And so we're the Department of No, you can't do that. And I think the other piece is they don't understand the value to them as individuals to participate in the governance program, and that it's not inhibiting business, but promoting it.
Yeah, I like that, man. I think, going off the same, game analogy, I think why people cringe is you either have the wrong rules or you have a game that nobody wants to play. If I like to play backgammon, right? That's a game I play. I love it. It's fun. Cribbage is another one. 3 people in my family hate cribbage. Hate it. So when I have the wrong game in my own information security program as the CISO, it's like forcing those 3 people to play cribbage. They hate it. They don't want to play, right? But I make them play because I'm the CISO. And so I think, to your point, you need to create the game that people want to play. right? You need to give them input. You need to understand them. You need to understand the culture. You need to understand the mission. You need to understand what we're all doing here. Because when you do create a game that people want to play, it's enjoyable. If everybody in my house loves playing cribbage, well, then every time I bring out the cribbage board, we're going to have a good time. And I think the same thing applies, when we build security programs and governance. I think it's really rare, in my 30 years and your, almost 30, in our combined 50 some odd years, I can count the number of times I've seen good information security governance less than two hands. And so it's not, and this is where it's not a science, right? It's an art. It really is, because people are not digital. People are analog. Governance is for the people, right? Computers only do what you tell them to do. So it's the people who configure them. So if I haven't created good rules that people want to follow to, tell the computers to do the right thing. So that's why it can't be science either. It's got to be art. You have to be a people person if you want your governance to actually, do anything.
And you've got to make it effective. A lot of times we make it ineffective because we set up a set of rules for the game that don't allow it to be played the way the players want to play it.
Mm-hmm. Well, how frustrating is it too, man, when you're playing a game and you're playing by the rules and people are cheating?
Well, and that's shadow IT, right? Shadow IT is the direct result of setting up a rule set that's too stringent for the business. And so they work around it, as has been done for, my whole career. I think where a lot of organizations fail in governance is they take a policy totalitarian type approach, a best practice, or as I call it, academia nirvana, right? The book says we should do it this way. Well, the book's not wrong. It'd be great if we did it that way. But that way's inconsistent with our reality. And so a good governance program should be very aligned to and consistent with your reality. You should be trying to mature as you go, right? Status quo isn't what you want to have. But your program needs to be structured in a way that actually works to move you forward. If it's too strict or stringent, it doesn't get adopted, therefore it doesn't help anything. You end up with more shadow IT. And if it's too loose, it's ineffective. It's just, general suggestions that aren't enforceable. So you've got to strike that balance, but that balance is going to be culturally dependent. It's going to be mission dependent. What do you do in your business? What is your business about? And have you done enough to support limiting risk while improving business, which should be the goal of any good governance program, limiting risk while improving and growing the business.
Well, and that's what we'll be covering in episode 8 too. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Our next episode, we'll be talking about governance alignment and how important that is, and, some strategies on how to do that. I think the last point, for this episode, and we still got a few minutes left, is what about the CISO? It's amazing how many CISOs I've talked to over the years, and being a CISO myself and you being one as well, that overcomplicate what their job actually is, right? And so a CISO, by title or otherwise, whether it be, by function, so you may not have the title of CISO, but you're the top security person in your organization, whether you want to be or not, you only have two jobs. And you and I say the same thing. We say it a little differently. Job number one, simplify it. Job number one is you consult the business or the organization to make good risk decisions. That's job one. Job two, then, is you implement those risk decisions to the best of your ability. The business makes risk decisions, not you. If you don't like their risk decisions, look in the mirror. Maybe you're not a good consultant. I'm pretty hard on CISOs, man.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think, many a junior has come to me and said, I want to be a CISO. And I said, why? And they said, because I want to make technology decisions. I said, that's not the CISO's job. You want to be the architect. If you want to make technology decisions, you're the architect. If you want to be the CISO, your job is, as you described, to interface with the business, help put risk into context. That is literally your number one function. Risk in context. If this happens, these things impact the business this way. Okay. Second job is to implement whatever that decision is to the best of your ability. Again, mitigating risk as much as possible and mitigating fallout. We have a term that is called residual risk. And that term indicates I have done all that I can do. And in order for this thing to function, it still exists. Real quick, I'll tell you, getting in a car, right? You put on a seatbelt, you have an airbag, you drive the car. The residual risk to driving a car is that you may have an accident. So you've taken all these steps to mitigate the impact of that accident, but you can't eliminate that from driving. There's always going to be a chance an accident could occur, so that's your residual risk. A CISO has the same job. Mitigate it to the best of their ability and address that residual risk as safely as they can.
Yeah, man, the two biggest complaints I've gotten from CISOs over the years, number one is I can't get the executive management team to pay attention, right? And so I think job number one is you consult the business to make good risk decisions. Maybe they don't understand that that's actually what you're trying to do. I don't make risk decisions here, right? And if you run into keep beating your head against the wall, at some point you update your resume and go somewhere else, right? There are good management teams that want to play this game correctly. So that's one of the things I hear a lot, as a complaint. The other thing I hear a lot is I can't get adequate budget. And the tell on that is if the business made risk decisions, there's your budget. I don't understand how you're having trouble finding budget when the business made the risk decision. Your job is to implement those risk decisions. So then you go back to the business and say, this is how much it's going to cost in the next 12 months to implement these risk decisions that we made as a team.
I agree.
If you're not going to give me the budget, then tell me what risk decisions we need to change.
Well, and I'll throw a caveat on that. If budget is your only measure of risk management, you're probably going about it wrong, right? There are many ways.
This is going to be a long podcast if we go there, man.
Many ways to manage risk without budget. So there's your intro to defining information security governance. We're going to pick up in the next episode talking about governance alignment. So how do you take this information security governance, and start to align it within your organization? So appreciate everybody tuning in. We will see you again in episode 8. This is right around the holiday time, so everyone have a wonderful, safe, happy, and healthy holiday.
Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas.
Love it.
We'll catch you next one.